In this video, we will log in using access and refresh tokens. Now I'm logged in, and when I inspect the page, I'll go to the network tab and I will refresh. We can see that the first time we request a user and we get unauthenticated because we don't have an access token. Then we call the refresh endpoint that we get this access token. And the third time we get the authenticated user with the bearer token in the headers. So let's learn how to do this. Before we start building the app, I would like to remind you that this video can be combined with other videos. So if you want to use any of these backend frameworks and more, because I don't know how many frameworks I will add in the future, I provided some links in the description of this video. Now let's build the app. We will start with a pre-built Svelte app that contains three components. One is a home component where we show just the message "you are not logged in", the login form, the register form, and in our app.svelte we have a header and we add these components into a router using Svelte SPA router. It will look then like this. So this is a home component, this is a login component, and this is the register component. Also, I'm using Bootstrap and I added some styles, so you can find this template in the description of this video. Make sure also to have a backend running, and now let's make the register form work. First, we need to install a package called Axios. npm install Axios, but the latest version of Axios doesn't work well with Svelte, so for the moment I will use this version 0.21.1. You may try the latest Axios version, but currently at the time of this recording the latest version doesn't work. So I will add here script, and for each input now I need to add a variable. So I will create a variable let name is equal to an empty string, so I will also initialize them. Email is equal to empty string, and password is equal to empty string. And now I will bind these values to the input. To bind them, I will use bind column value is equal to name, like this, and I will do it the same for the other values. Password. So now every time we change the input, these values will change, and if we change all the values and we type submit, we want to call a submit function, which I will add it now, submit, and this function will be called on submit here, and this will be the submit function that we want. We also want to prevent default. Before I add prevent default, when we submit the form it will refresh the page, as we can see. Not sure if you see it on the browser, but we added a question mark here because the page was refreshed. So for that, to prevent that behavior, we need to prevent default, and when we click right now, I'll try it now, submit, we can see that we are not refreshing and we didn't add that question mark. And now let's submit the form. So let's import Axios from Axios, and I will make this function asynchronous. Here I will await Axios will send a post request to http localhost port 8000/API/register, and the data that we will send is a name as the name, like this, but since the key and the value have the same name, we can put it like this, email and also password. So this is the request, and if this is successful, we want to redirect to the login page. So I will import here push from Svelte SPA router. And when the request is successfully completed, we will await here, push to the login page. And that should be it. Now let's try to register our user. So I'll register this user. And when I submit, if I redirect to the login page, which I do, it means that everything worked fine. And now we registered our user. Let's log in with that user. And I'll do it like this. I will copy the old code here and I will replace it in the login.svelte file. Why? Because it will be almost similar, because I need only to remove the name here. I'll change this to sign in, and I don't need the name here. I can remove the name variable, and when it's finished, I will push to the home page, and this is API/login. So now it is almost completed, because for the login we need to get an access and a refresh token, and we have to use two different ways of getting them. For the refresh token, it will be retrieved in the cookies. We need to add another option here, which is with credentials to true. So we need to add this option every time we want to get cookies from the backend. And this will get that cookie, and the access token, we will get it via the response here in the response body. And first we can check if response that status is equal to 200, which means that the response is successful, and I will push to the home page when the response is successful. And if it is, we want to get the access token and we want to add it to the headers. And the access token will be inside response.data. That token will be the variable that we want. And how do we add it in the headers? So I'll cut this value. We have to use Axios now. So Axios, defaults, headers, common. So we will add a common header for every Axios request. We need the authorization header, and this will be equal to bearer with that token. So now every request will have the same authorization header, and let's see it on our browser. So first I will inspect, I'll go to application, cookies here, and we don't have any cookies yet. So if I try to log in with the user that I just registered and I submit, we will see that we will get a refresh token cookie. So we got that value. It is HTTP only also. And when we go to the network, we can see that the first time we won't get so how do I close this? The first time we won't get a bearer token here, because it was just set. So we have to log in again with the same user. And the second request, we can see it is here, authorization, bearer, and this is the access token. So that should be it. This header is added for every request. And now in the home component, let's get the authenticated user. Here first I will import onMount from Svelte, because to get the authenticated user we have to request Axios again. So let's import also Axios, but we cannot do it here directly. That is not recommended. We have to use onMount. So every time we want to send request in the beginning, we have to use onMount, because it will run after the HTML has been rendered. And I'll make the function inside asynchronous, and here we will get a response from await Axios get the authenticated user. And if the response.status it is 200, then we want to display the message. I will do it like this: hi, and inside I will put a response that data is the body and the name is the name of the user, because the response.data will be the authenticated user. Also, I made a mistake here. This is HTTP localhost port 8000/API/user, because later we will change it to just user. For the moment, we need to keep the long URL. And let's test it now on the browser. It says you are not logged in. There are two cases that we get this: either the token has expired because it lasts for 30 seconds, or we refreshed the page and we lost the access token. To get the authenticated user directly, we have to log in immediately. And as you can see, we successfully authenticated. But if we refresh, we will lose the access token and we are still not logged in. So when the access token expires or we lose it, we need to use our refresh token to retrieve a new access token. How do we do that? We will do that via Axios interceptors. So let's create a directory here. I'll call it interceptors. And inside I will create a file, a JavaScript file, axios.js. I will import this file here, interceptors axios.js. And inside that file, first we need to import Axios, and then we need to set Axios.defaults base URL will be equal to this prefix here. So I'll cut this prefix and I'll paste it here. So this will make our Axios request look better. For example, this will be the register request and this will be the login request. So now they look better because they will all have this prefix. And now let's add the other part, which is the interceptor. So we need to add an interceptor for every response. So we can add an interceptor in the request or the response. In our case, we need an interceptor for the response. Before I write any code, what are interceptors? Interceptors will stand between requests. So we can do extra stuff once a certain response happens. So that is the functionality. And the first case is when the response is successful. And in this case, we don't want to do anything. So we get the response and we just return it. In the second case is when we have an error. And for the moment, I'll simply return the error also. And this interceptor for the moment does not do anything. So we can see our browser, it will work the same. We need to add here a condition once the if error that response that status it is 401. So this is the case when the user is unauthenticated, when the token may be expired or removed. If that is the case, we have to try to send a request. So I'll make this asynchronous. We'll get a response here. It will be equal to await Axios. We will send a post request to the refresh endpoint. So we want to try to refresh the access token. We will send an empty object because we don't want to send any information, but we need with credentials to true here also, because in order to get a new access token, we have to send the cookies also. And the cookies are not sent by default. We need to add with credentials to true to send them. And we will get a response. If the response, that status, it is 200, it means it worked, and we get a new access token for this. So when we get a new access token, I will go to login.svelte and I will copy this code here. We have to set that new access token to the headers, like we did before. And we have to redo our previous request. How do we do our previous request? Error.config contains the information about our previous request. And here we will simply return Axios, and inside we will add error.config. So this return in the end, it will redo our previous request. And that should be it. If we check the browser now, we can see that we are getting the authenticated user. And if I refresh now, we can see that the first time it fails, we get unauthenticated. The second time we call the refresh endpoint, and the third time we get the authenticated user. So this is how it works. Every time we lose or the token expires, we will refresh our endpoint. Still, it's not completed yet because it has one small error. We will show that error once we add the logout button here in the home component. So this message here, I will paste the logout button. So this is just a normal button. Can we show it here? So this is the logout button. It will look like this. And when we click, we want to click to a logout function, which I will add it now. Logout. And maybe we have to change the lang to TypeScript here. Not sure why the first time we have a problem. So we have this function logout where we need to call again Axios. So we need to send Axios post to logout. We don't need to send any data. I will send an empty object, but we need with credentials to true because this request will delete the refresh token. And that's it. So after we finish, I'll go to login. I'll copy again this header here. I'll paste it. And this time we'll set the authorization header to empty because we log out. And in the end, we will also push. So don't forget to import push from Svelte SPA router to the login page. I'll copy this and I'll do it the same here. If when we get the authenticated user, if the response is 401, we will also go to the login page here as well. And that should be it. So now when we try logout, we expect to be redirected to our login page, which we do. And also, as we can see, we removed our refresh cookie here. So that is removed as well. But now we will have an error. If we go to our home, we can see that the refresh endpoint is called a lot. So I have to stop the server and I have to restart this. So why is this happening? So I will restart it again here. This happens, let's go to the interceptor, because when we log out, we will get the response status 401 when we get the user. And then we will call the refresh endpoint, but the refresh endpoint will still return 401. And we will go here again and we will call the refresh endpoint again. And this will be an infinite loop. So this was the small bug that I was talking, and to fix this we have to call the refresh endpoint only once. And to do that we need an external variable. I'll create here a variable refresh is equal to false, and if the response.status it is 401 and we haven't refreshed, then we can refresh, but we need also to set refresh to true, because when we call refresh here and the refresh endpoint will return 401, it won't go here again because we set refresh to true, and we will go here where we will set again refresh to false again here, and that should be it. So now if we go to the home, we can see that the user will be called, it will return 401, and then we will call refresh 401, and we won't call it again. We won't have that infinite loop. So we can log in again, we can redirect, and everything will work as it should. So this was the login with access and refresh tokens. Also, if you want a more complicated authentication course, I will provide the link in the description of this video, the ultimate authentication course with Node.js and Svelte. You can pick whatever backend that you want apart from Node.js, but in this course you will learn logging with using two-factor authentication with Google Authenticator, and also social authentication with your Google account. If you are interested, you can get this course or you can get the Node.js bundle for just $8 a month if you are not in Europe. If you are in Europe, it's 9.52. So it's up to you. Thank you for watching this course, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.